how can I make this a career?
I think one part delusion.
Yeah.
2 parts just being like, I know what it's going to look like.
Bold and Brilliant Life with Bianca Peart. Welcome to the Bold and Brilliant Life Show. I am your host, Bianca Peart, and today we have a dynamic creative who works in digital campaigns, storytelling, and content production. What started off in a career in marketing at corporate organizations, including the NBA, where she helped launch Junior NBA, she has transferred those skills in the world of artistry. She has helped run campaigns with Walmart, Nike, NBA, MGM Resorts, Netflix, and more. She's also worked with incredible legends including LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, and she recently landed her first artist in residency through her exhibit Layers. Please welcome to the show, Dominique Oliveto. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited for this. How does it feel hearing about all of the work you've done in your beautiful career?
When you were going down that list, I was like, dang, I've done a lot. So it feels cool. It's just, nice to hear the transition because sometimes when you're in it, it's like, what the heck am I doing? But you really hyped up that intro, so I appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. But I want to go back from like where it all started. So growing up, what was it like growing up? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I was born in West Virginia near like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You know where WVU is, Morgantown?
Yes, yes.
Yep, Italian family, small town. I knew when I was younger, I was like, this is not, my place. But I quickly got into sports because, you grow up in like a college town. Pittsburgh was a strong city. So I just remember watching sports with my dad, like particularly basketball was something that just always got me into it. I had a half brother that didn't live with us, so I was essentially like an only child. So I think, having that imagination, I was always into different like creative things, never really knowing that that was something for, a career, but it was instrumental, all that time that I spent with my dad watching sports and watching basketball. He passed when I was 9, and that was definitely, a pivotal moment where I knew somehow having an association with sports was something I wanted to carry on to like continue his legacy and just, remember our moments together.
Yes, wow. I feel already connected. I grew up as an only child in Pennsylvania on the other side, closer to Philadelphia. And I know that, losing your father at such a young age, I can only imagine how that has impacted you. And you wanted to work in sports. So like college-wise, were you looking to work? Like what did you study? Where did you go to college?
Definitely. I think, a lot of it was like things that I know I want to do this, but I don't know how to get there. And that was like, you'll hear in a lot of this podcast and a lot of this journey, like you kind of have to trial and error, almost like fail forward, so to speak. So like my career journey has honestly been just this evolution of like finding myself, to be honest. So I went to school at Slippery Rock. You might have had some PA people.
God. Yes.
There,
so I did competitive cheerleading, and I believe Slippery Rock is like a nationally ranked school for cheerleading. So that's how I know about it.
Yeah, they have like a great sports management program and things too. So when I went, I was exploring that. I started off in communications. I remember like a class I took, visual literacy was something that really stood out to me. And again, creativity was always something like natural, but I knew that if I worked in sports, that was something that was a little bit more maybe like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it was a straighter path, you know what I mean? I was always a creative person who really liked sports. So I started learning more about like the agency world and shifted my major to more like pre-law studies, still kept in with communication. And then when I graduated, I moved back home for a little bit, worked in a law office to take my LSAT, and I was like, excuse my language, I hate this shit. This is not for me. This cannot be the only way to get to where I want to go. And I really, always loving storytelling. I was like, I swam, so I was an athlete, but I was always more of like the theater girl, creative. I'm 5'1", so I was not the star athlete. So when I was home, I was just kind of like thinking, after college, what do I want to do with this? And I was like, I love storytelling. I love sports. Like, sports marketing was a career I was learning about. There was so much that you could do. So I applied to a master's program at Northeastern in Boston where you could focus primarily on sports. It was like just a master's of sports leadership, and there was various paths you could take. So I got into that program and moved to Boston, and my first semester was me working with the Celtics and going into their office every day and really learning like all the aspects of sports. And I started in PR and communications. So again, pitching stories, all that. And, I'm glad that I kind of pursued that law path, but I realized like I have to be doing more than just something that's behind a desk and like being so into the weeds of this. It wasn't allowing me to really like think, use my brain. And I think that was like a big moment of just trial and error once again.
Trial and error for sure. And first of all, getting into the sports industry, there's a taboo. It's very hard. It's very challenging. So the fact that you were able to get your first sports opportunity working with the Celtics, how did that come together?
So through that program, because again, I knew if I was going to do this, I needed to go to a city. Pittsburgh was great, but I was like, I need to be in a sports town. Boston is, a sports town. Don't love all their teams or all their fans, but Boston is, a sports town. So we had a summer institute that when I moved to Boston before my classes start, I went, and there was a guest speaker there who he worked for the Celtics in media relations. And, the thing about Northeastern is you always had to do a cohort, especially in a grad program. So that means you had to at least spend a couple months working somewhere that counted as class credits. So after, the speaking engagement, I introduced myself to the man from the Celtics, Jeff Twiss. He's been there a long time, like media relations guy. And he was like, well, we do have an internship program, you should apply. So I applied, and, it took a couple months. But when I got there, that was definitely like, okay, this is a resume builder. You at least get your foot in the door, right? And it was cool to see how many, women were there. I worked under a woman, Heather Walker. She just recently passed, I think last year, but she was, an icon in the sports media world. So it was really cool to just see how ticket sales, media, marketing, content, all that come together. And it just went from, again, putting myself out there and going to class early.
Wow, that's incredible. And the fact that you were able to have kind of like that rotational experience. So while your entryway into sports, it was on the media side. When did you like navigate or figure out, okay, how can I explore more outside of like the law, the PR, the media?
I mean, that was definitely like my sports journey, and like the corporate side was definitely like a longer push. So from there, I went to Boston College and I worked in their media relations department. So that's something that, I kept doing while I was through school, was like exploring that path. I knew media relations, marketing was something that I wanted to get into. When I was at Boston College, I learned like the collegiate sports route, probably wasn't for me. But again, I'm just constantly learning and figuring out, what could be next. And as I was going through the program, I feel like I was always just talking to people and like meeting as many people as I could to figure out like, where exactly do I want to be? Because you're around it. It's a lot. You know what I mean? Sports, it's like you could take any different paths. Where is this going to take you? And I think I realized at the time I did like working with like cameras and media and writing. It's just, I'm not thinking of all the other jobs. I'm thinking, what are the jobs that these larger institutions employ you for? And, it wasn't at that time, and around, 2013, it wasn't big like how, the media landscape is now. So I was looking for jobs when I was graduating my program, and a friend had worked in New York, and she said, hey, I know it's not sports, direct with a team, but Chelsea Piers is hiring a marketing coordinator. That was my old role. Would you be interested in it? I came to New York and interviewed. That was something I thought could be cool, still sports adjacent. So moved to New York, started working at Chelsea Piers. would moonlight at Madison Square Garden, working for GMR Marketing, kind of as a suite host you see at games all the time, like really just bringing in corporate clients. And I was like, I'm still going to get to the NBA. Like, I know I want to get to the NBA.
That was your goal.
That was my goal.
Okay.
And really, I would say I learned better goal setting as I continued to go on, because I think the NBA was just such a, like, I want to get there, that I was so much more focused on that instead of like, what do I really want to be doing? So I applied to a lot of roles. I was actually interviewing for a role in NBA Cares and didn't get that, but they said, hey, you know, we're starting this junior MBA program. It's kind of a mix of like youth marketing, you know, different evolutions like that. We think you could maybe be good for this. So went through another interview process, got that job, and then in 2016 started working full-time at the NBA.
Wow. And with the junior NBA, you were able to tap into those skills because you helped build the junior NBA, you know, the media side, and hired young reporters, correct?
Yeah, the junior NBA was pivotal in me becoming a, you know, visual artist, because while I was there, you know, photography started to be something that was more interesting to me. So I would just bring it around, and for my own sake, like, it's cool, I'm at all these behind the scenes events, let me, you know, take some pictures of players. I'm learning more about how NBAE works. I got to work on our first junior NBA commercial spot, so went to LA and helped work on that with like the CMO of the league. And the kid reporter program you're mentioning, you know, part of my job was, how do we get kids engaging with the junior MBA program? Because it was, yes, you should be going to our basketball clinics and things, but it's also, you know, educating kids on the league. So I worked with Miles Brown, who was on the show Blackish,
Yes.
and Caleb McLaughlin on Stranger Things. And, you know, we had different players, and, you know, we would take Miles specifically to different NBA arenas, and him being a celebrity that the players loved, but also him being just a huge fan, it made for this, you know, great storytelling. And when I was doing that, I was like, this is what I could be doing, you know, in my full time. I was starting to take more pictures of people seriously. A couple players had invited me to Fashion Week and to capture them. And, you know, I was just at a place in my life where I was like, I'm happy, but I feel like I'm at a moment that really makes me feel good, but everything else that comes from this doesn't. I have to be able to be in a position to just create more. But if I didn't take that role and start to dabble in it, I don't think I would be, you know, as confident to have pursued the path that I did.
So when did you first pick up a camera?
Picked up a camera when I was probably, I'd say, in like 7th grade. I did journalism and media for, you know, my middle school. So
What?
like
At
doing
middle
stuff for
school?
yearbook. Yeah.
Wow.
My mom's best friend, who was my neighbor, was a photo teacher, journalism teacher. I loved what she did. So I loved working on that, where it was like, again, you're covering, you know, the teams, you're helping to put the pictures together on layouts and spreads and how does it look, doing stuff like this for the morning news. So I was always around it, but again, you know, not to the point to where I really understood that this could be a path. I think if that was something that was maybe nurtured in me when I was younger, I would have pursued it. But, you know, my family's Italian. It's like, you're going to go get this job and college education and, you know, do this and that. But that was something that I just always loved. And funny enough, I would tell the stories around sports. So I continued to take photo classes in high school and stuff. But, you know, it always just remained like, I bring my camera around, but it was a hobby. In New York, it started to be like, this is something I want to do. And particularly, I was excited when I was at the NBA about there's a whole plethora of stories about these athletes off the court, what they're interested in, etc. Like, this is what I should be doing. But at the league, there wasn't really a place for that at that time. As you know, it's been a build up to where we're just getting to that point where that's, you know, what's overtaking the masses. So I feel like I saw where this was maybe going, you know, when I was in the thick of working my job at the NBA.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You said growing up, you know, our parents You work a traditional job, a stable job. Like, what is this creative side, or what is this photography storytelling side? So how did you navigate, okay, how can this become something that could become lucrative or could become, stable income, knowing that like this is not the norm, or this is not how I grew up? Like, how were you able to just coach yourself and figure out, how can I make this a career?
I think one part delusion.
Yeah.
2 parts just being like, I know what it's going to look like. You know what I mean? Like, I have this master's degree. I've made it to the most popular sports league. And then, I have to tell people, like, I want to quit and I want to move to LA for a little bit. I was at a point in my life where I think I just had been, like, grinding at this for so long that I needed to tap into myself. I knew that LA was big in, the creative community, storytelling, filmmaking, all that. I had friends out there. I was in a place where I just said, if I don't go do this now, what's going to happen? I had traveled towards the end of 2017 to Italy with my family. And while I was there, I was like, I'm so happy just like being away from the office. Like, I loved working at the NBA and feel like I made so many lifelong friends, but it was starting to take me away from that passion that I had for basketball, because I'm like, I'm in it, but what I want to be doing is just a fraction of, what I could be. And the worst that could happen is I failed. I did talk to my family about it. I had their support. I had friends who I could stay with in LA. I did ask the NBA if I could transfer and work out of LA, and I could only have done it for a certain amount of time, which they allowed. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to stay here, maybe freelance for a few years, figure it out. And, the rest was history, but it wasn't a walk in the park. Like, it was very hard. And it's still, that inconsistency sometimes feeling is something you do have to juggle and be able to like constantly be pulling other skills, out of your toolkit to work. And I think I just started in the past maybe like 3 years really finding my way. But LA was just like a next step in the journey. Then there was a whole journey in LA,
Of course. I mean, you literally bet on yourself. You mustered up the courage and said, you know what, like, there's something here. You tapped into your younger self. You always had the camera. You were always into filming and like storytelling. So when you moved to LA, and you were working with the NBA still, but then eventually that time had kind of expired, what was your first project?
So my first project was, I actually did work with NBA player JaVale McGee. I helped, do some social content for him. I got to travel to Uganda and capture his foundation and help build videos. I think the first thing I did when I moved out to LA was like, how can I utilize contacts that I made at the league to start doing this? That was vital, but it was also a really big learning curve, because, people don't appreciate when you don't have that at nba.com email address. You know what I mean? So it's like, and, I don't want to say this in a bad way, but like the stereotype of like, you're in this corporate job and then now you want to go be like behind the camera. Some people were really accepting of that and saw the vision. Some people were like, I had, executives and people I'd get lunch with, like, why did you leave? Why wouldn't you have just like transitioned somewhere else? And I was like, well, that's what I'm here to do. But I, did my due diligence of meeting with agents, meeting with people at the league, figuring out like what could be a good pitch for me, because I knew that sports was something that I wanted to do. So I was meeting with different athletes and saying, this is how I could run your social media. This is how I could help create some content for you. I would also work at like PR agencies doing red carpet events, different kind of gig-based jobs. But because that early time was tough. And that was something that was a huge adjustment where, I feel like I got to LA and 3 months in, I was like, what the hell did I do?
It's so interesting you mentioned JaVale McGee, because I actually just had a conversation with him, and he now has his own show on Players TV. Shout out to Players TV that recently launched the JaVale McGee show. It's kind of like a night show like Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel. And something he said that when he first started out in his career, he was always into content. He's he's a Grammy winning artist on Justin Bieber's song, which I recently learned. But he was saying like at the time it wasn't cool, and he was told you need to focus on basketball. What is this content stuff? What are you like? You need to focus on the game. And he was like ahead of the curve, ahead of the content creation curve. Now, obviously, everyone's doing it, but he was kind of like pigeonholed. He's like, I wish I could have like tapped. He was on YouTube before YouTube was a thing, before it was monetized. So it's unique and serendipitous that you two were able to like, he took a bet on you, you took a bet on him to have that first gig. But, you know, to see it all come full circle where like content is the thing. Can you speak to like why storytelling is so powerful and like why it's so important to you to work with athletes and showcase their stories?
Definitely. I mean, I think JaVale is like a good case because while he's got so many accolades on the court, he's an NBA champion, etc. Like this side of his personality is something that people don't see. And my way of thinking about it always was, if you would just invest in the money, if you would create content, if you would start building your own stories, then that's opening up opportunities for brand deals for you. People can see you like fashion, you like comedy, you do all these things. And it's something that I was like, there is a method to this madness. I had been preaching this, honest to God since, 2017 when it was just becoming something. And I think that the challenge is that yes, athletes want to do it. They do get pigeonholed because of the time, their schedules. I also think that people don't realize that doing this is an investment. I mean, you're learning this with this show.
Yeah.
It's like, it's something that it's IP, and building that is always, you've got to take a chance because you've got to see what the ROI is going to be. And that was something that, I feel like people always see the importance of it, but it takes a lot to get those brand deals and to get those content shows and things like that. So, a challenge when I was starting was players being able to commit to the consistency of it, their teams seeing the value in the consistency of, investing in somebody to that, because it is, you've got to pay somebody on your salary retainer based. You've got to make sure that they know how to do all these different things. And as it grows, you need different positions, etc. So I think it's something that could be a channel for them. I always saw that, but it's still getting the people to invest and getting the players to invest the time, I think is the challenge.
It's certainly a challenge. And, you have done remarkable work working with, well-renowned brands, MGM Resorts, Netflix, NBA, Nike. Talk to us about that. How were you able to secure those opportunities, without, in some cases not having the NBA.com attached to your name, or like a brand or an agency attached to your name?
I mean, networking was key. You had to put yourself out there and put yourself out there in a way where you're not afraid to, admit, hey, I'm starting over. But I think, being in marketing, I knew that I had to market myself. So the more work that I was doing with athletes and starting to shift of like, well, maybe if I'm not the main one, definitely networking, definitely leaning into, more skills as being a producer. Because, a producer is the one who's really putting everything together and, leading the show. So, the more that I would do like behind the camera with athletes, my name started to get out there, and I was like, well, athletes is just like a minimal part of this. And truly, I feel if that was the only thing that I continued to pursue, it would have been a really long and arduous journey, because like just athletes can be tough, love them to death. But the more that I was around, built trust with them, their teams, started networking with production companies, etc. You get one campaign leads to the next. And really being in that producer spot was something that opened up the door for me, because I knew it's like I can continue to get better as a photographer. I can continue to learn more about storytelling, but a producer is something that like I have all the keys now. I can put together the right position to lead a project. And, I think the first gig that I got with that was with Game 7 marketing on a Nike project, and that was a big one for me.
What was that project? Share more about
It
that.
was producing summer content for Nike basketball. So, we went to different events like Nike Nationals, this 3-on-3 tournament in Spokane, Washington, the Drew League, like different tentpole events that just showed that like basketball never stopped. It was when Nike did their big Basketball Never Stops campaign. So we were producing content for the basketball channels, for the social realm. So that was something that was just really fun to do, and, learned a lot to see how Nike intersects, and, just the world of brands, I think really just opened my eyes to how big this could get there.
Could get there for sure. And, how would you describe your creative style? Because I know you do like street, but like a blend of like abstract.
Definitely. And I think that's something that like, it's been something that I've really like evolved almost in recent years. Cause I think, when you're producing, I think to like bring it back, it's like, so, I work on various levels of the creative process. I do production, I direct myself, and then I, create photography myself. I rotate because that's, the best way to continue to just always be working. I care about storytelling, so it taps into different areas. So for producing, it's more, I'm making sure that I'm taking that brief and finding the best creatives for that. And, that we're meeting all the clients' objectives for, when I'm more the one leading. I think anything that's really rooted in duality, I like it to be a little edgy, moodier, come from like a unique perspective where it's almost like the real life is surreal, or you're really bringing people in, like especially with documentaries, at like verite style coverage that's making you feel like you're almost a part of their world. Like I duality is something that I talk about a lot, but I think that there's two sides to every person, to every story. There's things that can be juxtaposed that can, fit different narratives. So I like that a lot. And I think when I started to lean into that, more sports work did come, because it is essentially like, who is my favorite player off the court, on the court, who's my favorite artist, etc. So I really like to work on those things where I can kind of make it a little bit edgy, different, and blend, all the worlds that I've lived in.
Yes, because you are living in so many worlds, and it's just, magnificent for people who even want to like get into the world that you work in. Like, what advice do you have for them on navigating this creative journey? Because you don't work in one landscape, as you mentioned. You do producing, you do film, photography, like there's different elements. So what advice do you have for them?
I would say find your niche and run with that at first, because I think that having that helps you start finding the right projects. Like sports was a niche, sports and fashion, those are things that like I continue to build, where I certainly, don't want to just stay in that area, but you start to build a reputation for it. I would say, be okay if you don't want to do all different areas. Like I'm a very, multi-hyphenate person. I like that because I can, work creative strategy, I can do producing, etc. But there's a lot of jobs and a lot of agencies open now where you can be a producer full-time. Freelance isn't the only way. And that's something that, I think if I look back, I'm like, I probably, it was great to bet on myself and how I did it, but maybe I would have gone and worked at an agency or worked at a production company or started to learn, that way. So to know that, like, yes, you have to bet on yourself, constantly create for yourself. Don't compare, and don't think that social media, like, you don't have to be this person on there every day that's like, I'm shooting this and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Like, there are other ways to get to it versus trying to be an influencer in it. And I think last I'll say is always be a student. Like, I'm learning something new every single day. I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And my mentality is that, like, I always want to learn, get better, improve. I'm more concerned with that at this point in my career than being portrayed as this expert online. Like, if you see the work, it speaks for itself, but the time for me to talk about it and teach it and bring into everything just isn't there yet. And I think that that's sometimes how people start. And it's a great way to get started, but learning from experts is also a great way to get started. And I feel like that's what I was blessed to do, is like, maybe it was a longer route, but one that I personally needed.
One that worked for you. And, you know, there's a lot of ups and downs that comes with it. How do you handle creative blocks? Because we get them. At least I do.
I mean, I think sometimes, like, the freelance of it all, you know, can kind of stress you out a little bit. I think creative blocks for me is when I realize, like, I'm consuming more than I'm creating. So I peel it back to, like, okay, if I am going to consume for inspiration, is it like looking at shot deck online, or is it watching an old film, reading, getting out in nature, sometimes just taking out a journal and writing ideas down. I think you don't have to do everything so fast, and that's what I remind myself. Like, there's projects that I'm just getting off the ground now that I've been working on for years. It takes time, and I think constantly trying to work on different things is how I get through it as well. Like, is there a way that I can consult on a project, do this, go somewhere, go through old work? You know, you're going to hit those blocks if you're constantly seeing what everybody else is doing. And so much is coming out so fast, and that took me out for a while, you know, because I was like, I'm looking so much at the outside before the inside. So I think when I hit those blocks, I know it's not necessarily that the creativity isn't flowing. It's like I'm not focusing on the right things.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that. You know, again, there's a lot of ups and downs, and the industry can get very challenging. There's a lot of rejection that comes with it, a lot of no's, or a lot of not yet, or you start to see the art out there where it's hard to compare, like, but I think inherently we do compare. But you start to see like the same art or the same thing, like the same outcomes, right? How do you navigate working when everyone's kind of like aspiring for that same sort of outcome, or like you see the same people doing the same things? Like, how do you navigate that, where I feel like, especially now with social media, and now there's influencers, you know, really making strides in great ways, but also maybe not so great ways, because you see the same faces. So how do you navigate the same faces, same places, same art, same outcome?
That's a great question. And it's definitely something I think I personally, I don't want to say struggled with, but like, it is hard, because you're like, I know that I could do this. You know what I mean? I know that I could be a part of this. So it's going back to that. Okay, well, how do I shift to maybe what I'm doing right now? Like, if I'm not ready for this photography campaign right now, how can I organize a test shoot? Then can I be working with some of these because ultimately, like, if you're in the role of a photographer, a director, somebody that's leading, a creative director, these big campaigns, like, you need to know the production companies, the agencies, etc. Yes, you have to build, you know, the work first. So the first thing is, like, when I would see that, I'm like, head down, you know, I'm not there yet. It's tough, especially it's tough when you see it and you're like, I know I can do it, but I have to, you know, do it for myself. So I think it was constantly just like taking jobs to where I was learning from different directors. I was just kind of being that sponge and taking the breaks that I needed from social. I mean, to be honest, that's why I didn't jump on that influencer train and things at first. Do I think it's bad? No. Do I think at the time it wasn't for me, because I was like, if I stay so glued to social media, I'm going to implode. It's just, that's not how I consume things. And I think that it's therapy in a way, because you have to do the mental work to be like, there's so much out there. So when I started seeing all the same things and the same people and all that, I was like, I have to just shift my clients, shift what I'm doing, shift the focus, because that's always going to be there. I mean, we're in a time right now where it's like the new influencer, the new trend, the new shiny object is always going to be there. So my mentality is just stay ready for when your time comes. And, you know, I think working in this field is always waiting for your big break, but you can celebrate those mini breaks along the way that start to get you closer. And I think those mini breaks started to make me realize I'm not seeking the same things that some of these other artists are seeking, or even the artists who did get it and got it, we don't see what they had to work through behind. You know, everybody who gets their big campaign, who gets their big break, who gets this, has had months, years of waiting for when that is going to happen to me. So it's like, again, it's a mental game. All this for me was a mental game, and this journey really matured me in ways that I needed and exposed the areas that I was worried about too many other things. Because when you're putting yourself out there creatively, you got to get over the fear of being seen and perceived. You got to do it on your time. And still, you know, there's campaigns and things I see where I'm like, I know I could be doing that, but I also know that I went a different route, and my route is still going to get me to where I need to be. It's just I have to accept that this was my path. And I think that radical acceptance has started to propel things faster, because I wasn't so caught up in the BS of, well, they got it, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And this, that, and the other.
That is so true. And I can speak to that on my own, especially when I, you know, really started getting into the emceeing world. You know, there's space for all of us. That's what I've learned. There is space for all of us. But at first, it was debilitating. That rejection hurt, like, it got to my soul. Like, I never felt so low, because I thought the rejection was like, I'm not good enough. I'm not valued. I'm not, like, why am I even doing this? The amount of times I'm saying, oh, I quit. Like, we all say this, right?
So many times.
But like, we have to, that resilience and that toughness, and really looking within ourselves and like, hey, we have a value, we have a talent here. Like, what do I want? Like, what am I here for? Am I here to get yeses for everything? Like, if I get a no, I'm going to allow that to dictate my whole entire life. Like, those no's and rejections hit so hard, but it's built so much strength. And like, the moment I surrendered, all these opportunities kept pouring in. It was so bizarre. But like, I really think there's like an energy there where like, you can just feel, once you surrender, let go, literally let go, let God, or let go whatever spirit you have. And I think for you, you know, you've had incredible opportunities. Can you speak about, you worked with Vince Carter, Pau Gasol, like so many athletes. What was your favorite project?
Favorite project? I need to think about that for a second, but I want to quickly go back to the rejection thing that you said, because you hit on something important that it's like it sticks to you. You know what I mean? And especially when you're in roles like us, where it's kind of like you have these portfolio projects where it's like, this one proves that I can do the next one, etc. A lot of people don't see how many no's you had to get in between those yeses. And that's something that is very humbling. And it's like, it does keep you, like, it teaches you surrender. It teaches you, you know, to keep going. And I think that that's something that now more people experience than not, because the brands, the agencies, the hiring, like, they want what is the most convenient to them right now, and that's who's the most visible. And you have to balance between, like, how visible do I want to be, and it's important, but then also, like, again, pulling back, where do I want to focus, what do I want to be doing? And I think it's something that a lot more people right now are struggling with. But those rejections, when you look at it in the hindsight, it's like, well, the yeses I got mattered so much more than those rejections. And then sometimes you see, well, those people do end up, you know, coming back around too, which is something
Isn't that funny when they circle back? Like, I'm sorry, I have to just talk about that, because you're right. It's about visibility. Excuse me. It's about visibility, like who's kind of hot. It's not always about that, but it certainly plays a role, and it's becoming more and more of something that I've personally experienced that like matters when you get these opportunities.
Absolutely. And it's like, again, not putting yourself down. But the visibility thing, I mean, you're asking me about all these projects where it's like a lot of people don't know that I worked on that with Vince, that I worked on that with Pow. You know, it's like you post it once and it kind of goes out into the ether. And I've been challenging myself lately, like, to share more on social. And I had to change my mentality where it's like, okay, one, I'm going to do it at my rate, but two, my goal isn't validation from others. I think when I first started this, just because the career is very, people have got to like your work to believe in it, I didn't realize that I was so much like validation seeking instead of like, just put yourself out there, do this for you. So I'm working personally on trying to be more visible now, and it's scary, but you know, you got to do it at your time. So you're reminding me, I'm like, I have more work I haven't really shared.
What was it like working with Kobe Bryant?
Kobe.
And what was the project that you worked on?
So I worked with Andy Bernstein, who's a longtime Hall of Fame basketball photographer in LA. I was helping him with his Legend of Sport podcast. And, you know, he was just a great, you know, to be around. He's done so much amazing work. I wasn't going in the path of ever being a sports photographer like on court, but when he had this podcast, you know, I worked with him for a little bit and helped him with it, and he called me and said he was doing an episode with Kobe, and obviously they had this long-standing relationship. He had, you know, photographed him his whole career, so I got to go help, you know, produce that episode at Kobe's office and take behind-the-scenes photos. So it was just a one-time thing, you know. Again,
what you said, it was just a one-time thing.
Yeah, but it was. Yeah, you're right. And it's like, you know, that's something that is a constant reminder of like, when you're a part of these projects, you're still witnessing the entire creative process. You're still a big part of it. But it was like, I think being around him was so infectious. I mean, he's just a professional through and through. Seeing that relationship with him and Andy was probably the biggest thing and takeaway for me, because I saw like this relationship between photographer, creative, artist and athlete, artist and talent, something that's just, you know, iconic. So to be around him was really cool, and I'm blessed that I got to do that in his post career. I think, you know, rest in peace, Kobe. He's so inspiring on every level, but who he is off the court and who he was becoming in retirement, I think would have been probably like the best Kobe that we would have seen for sure.
For sure. So I do want to talk about, you know, relationships and networking. That is literally an art and it's skill in itself. And for me personally, that's something I'm leaning in. Well, maybe, I don't know, you could speak to it. We're both only children. Like, as an only child, I like to keep to myself. I'm personally introverted. Like, going out and talking, like I can do it, but like maintaining the relationship and building the relationship can get a little overwhelming to me. So how do you navigate those relationships and building them and the networking, and just because that's essential and has contributed to majority of our opportunities?
You know, definitely taking advantage of going to events and, you know, doing things like that, meeting up with people for coffee and building the relationships before, you know, like real relationships versus transactional. But also there is that thing where it's like you want people to know what you do, you know? So it's not being afraid of the follow-up, constantly, you know, sending out your pitch tape, putting yourself out there. I think now, again, social media, like a post is kind of networking. You're putting yourself out there. But then also like knowing when to do it and when not to do it. I mean, I think if I look back at networking, there were so many things I would have done differently. There are so many things I feel like I did great at. I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I really had this realization like a couple weeks ago, is knowing your audience. Like, I think I spent several years only pitching to sports people who couldn't see the true vision of what I did. And then when I started getting these agency clients and working on things where it's like they want to hire people for your skills. Then the networking started to become easier because I'm like, how can I pitch this to one client? But then, how can I also start to, these are the people that really need my skill set. So I think that there's a level of strategy to it where it's not just like, go meet everybody and be seen, because people need to know what you do. I think now we're in times where a lot of people can put a persona that some people don't know what these people do, and then they get jobs and they're not maybe the right people for it, etc. So I think that in networking, it is just something that you have to figure out what's right for you, and then make sure, I would catch myself when I'm like, I feel like I'm maybe networking out of desperation, or I'm doing too much, I'm coming off too eager. Like it's just a learning thing. But in everything you have to do what's best for you. Like you're always going to get there, and nothing's worth trying to be the most visible person in the world instead of doing the work, because networking, it makes a hell of a difference. But if you get that job and you can't do that job, then you were not networking, you were bullshitting.
Yeah.
And, that's something that, again, I think putting your head down and doing the work and then sending that out was sometimes the best networking that I did, because it's like you prove to people like you could do it.
And the work is the network. Like the proof is in the work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And making sure that, you did good on projects. There's some projects that like, hey, when I was getting started, I didn't, have the best outcome, or clients that you see, these aren't the best people. But I think it is always important to make sure that like you're staying connected with people that you work with in the past too, because you never know how those worlds could collide again.
Yes, and everything colliding, I had the honor of attending your exhibition, Layers. Can you speak to us more about that exhibition and your residency, your artist residency?
Definitely. Yeah, so Layers is a exhibit of, really telling the story of art, fashion, sport, how it goes together. It came about because I needed something that wasn't just, me working for a check, right? Because, you're doing all these projects. Sometimes when you're pouring into it creatively for other people, you forget that to really grow, at least, on the creative end, you've got to do it for yourself. So I've had all these years of body of work of, times that I've done portrait work of athletes or shot them in a more like fashion-centric capacity. And I got the idea to do it when I was working with the Donda Doves Basketball Academy, because I was, capturing them in a really unique way. And I was like, I want to start building this to where people can actually come look at the art and see it in a way that's unique. Because, everybody's doing the follow docs, everybody's doing this, but I'm like, art and observing imagery is something that I think is important. So, I feel that I've been able to really capture this essence of them, and I wanted to put on events that brought people together who liked art, sport, and fashion, and then could just see something different. So I did one in LA. We met at the one that I did for New York Fashion Week. And then it's been something that I've just continued to evolve as like a passion project. But the Line Hotel in LA had, offered to be the artist in residence for Q3. So what I'm doing is putting my work up in their lobby for 3 months. It's still in the fashion and sport vein, but it's more editorial focused work centered on like the connection of the clothes versus the athletes. So this is my first one that I'm doing that I think is really leaning into me as, not just, it's about sports, but it's not just, hey, she's the girl who photographs basketball players, because that's not all I do,
Correct. Yeah, and go back real quick. Donda Doves, that's the basketball, the school with Kanye West, right?
Yes, okay. I was the photographer and, content creator for them. Unfortunately, the year that the team did, collapse because of Kanye's, anti-Semitic remarks. So that was a major moment, a moment for me that I thought that I had made it virtually, to the top of the iceberg. I mean, he liked my work. It was great. That project collapsing what I thought was maybe like the worst thing that could have happened to me could have been one of the better things, because it just taught me so much about idolize the work, don't idolize the celebrities, like be there, find a way, like, because again, I did do enough work that, you know, through my connections, he saw it, and that was great. And, you know, he's crazy, but as an artist, you know, his opinion is definitely valuable. So that was something that was really cool. It showed, hey, you can get to the highest level, but when that gets stripped from under you, you still got to create. And when I was going through all of that, you know, starting to birth these personal projects was something that helped me, you know, to get out of that rut. Because that was tough to fall from grace in the public eye, and then to also never have people get to see the work that you did, because I did do these like dynamic team photos. So I'll do a Donda gallery at some point. But yeah, it was gonna be a good team. It was definitely gonna be a good team. Some of the boys are in the NBA today.
Well, that's beautiful. And I mean, that kind of attributes to the layers term. Where did the term layers come from?
The term layers came from, you know, just there's multiple layers to these athletes. There's multiple layers to stories around sports. Sport connects with society. Sport connects with art. Sports connect with fashion. And then, you know, the fashion plays directly, you know, there's layers to clothes. I like to layer my clothes.
Yes.
So, you know, that was what came of the name. And I did put some of the Donda work in the gallery, but it's more a myriad of like all different athletes, even starting to make things out of their jerseys. You know, I want it to be something that evolves with them to where, you know, we can sell some of the art together. You know, you do things for teams. It's just a way to really observe these athletes, but then also observe that connection of how sport really touches with so many, you know, artistic platforms.
Dominique Oliveto, how do you want people to remember you and that legacy? I know we're still young, but the vision is there. You're an artist, you're a visionary. So what's that look like for you?
Oh, I mean, one, I think me personally is like, I never gave up on myself. Like, I think in times that I have evolved as a person so much, this journey was not pretty. Like, you know, when people hear this, it's not this easy path. Like, I got up, I stumbled, but I never gave up on myself. And I think that's something that's important to know about me, but also for anybody else. It's like you could do absolutely anything. Like, I had no formal training in this. I taught myself, I pushed, I took all my skills from other things and merged it. And anybody can do that, you know? And I think creatively, my legacy that is I want people to feel good from what they see of mine. And obviously, you know, I want to have this style that I continue to elevate. You know, filmmaking is really important, you know, big campaigns. But I think it's me being somebody that just like trusts the sanctity of storytelling. Like, I want to help other people get stories off the ground. I want to help the right stories get off the ground. I think right now everything is so the same. Everything is so watered down. Social media has diluted a lot, and I just want to be somebody that like still preserves like the sanctity of art, storytelling, and like what that can do for people.
It's very powerful.
Thank you.
We're going to get into our rapid fire. You ready?
I'm ready.
Most inspiring city you've worked in?
Paris.
Ooh. Dream person you haven't worked with yet?
Ooh, this one was one that was stumping me. So I kind of have, I know it's rapid fire, but I have a couple answers. In basketball, there are two athletes who I really want to shoot. So anybody in the basketball world watching this, I need a shoot with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Kill that. And then on the women's side, I really want to shoot with Cameron Brink. I think she's like a model, could kill it. And then I'd say like somebody who I'd want to shoot who I didn't. I don't know. That's a really tough question.
Those were great answers.
Yeah, those are. I think keeping it in the basketball space, I know. I think that there's other personalities and things that I'd love to work with, but let's just say, I'm definitely open. I am an Ariana Grande girl, so Ariana, I'm going to direct a video one day or something, so I would throw that out there.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you worked with Willow Smith.
There we go. You never know.
Yes, you never know. So Canon, Nikon, or Sony?
Canon all day, every day. Canon, as I'm looking into a Sony camera right now. It is Canon all day. The colors in Canon, like Canon film, everything. I started Nikon, but I am stuck to Canon.
Okay.
Sponsorship.
You heard it. We got to manifest. Put it out there. Yes. I love it. I love it. One photo you wish you could take again, and why?
It would be the Donda photos. I think taking that team photo was like a moment now in history and time, and I would definitely just want to do it again.
One thing you wish you did differently when you transitioned from your corporate 9-to-5 to full-time freelance?
I would have gone into other creative 9-to-5s before just like pushing the pavement on myself, just because like what you could learn, like the long-term projects that I've had with agencies and production companies have been so fulfilling, and I think that I would have enjoyed going down. I don't want to say enjoyed. I'm so happy, but I think it would have, like, that instability sometimes can really affect with your creativity, especially when you're starting that. So I would have done that differently.
Which project were you most nervous about?
Project most nervous about? The Donda shoot was definitely nerve-wracking. And then I would also say, like, my first directorial shoot, it was a project with Spring Hill. It was like a 3-part docu-series. So, that first moment where you're really in that seat of director, I was nervous, but that to date is like my favorite project show.
Which artist or who did
it? It was actually a series for Samsung, and we did a 3-part docu-series called Making It, where we were promoting Samsung's new phones and their cameras. So we paired an emerging music artist with an emerging director. They came up with a treatment and actually filmed the music video on the phones, but then I did the documentary of like bringing people into the artistic process, but it was really a doc about phones. So that was cool for me to be like, okay, people are seeing the vision. This isn't sports. So I loved that project.
That is so fun. And I love that it tapped into emerging young artists because they don't get enough shine. We need to highlight our
emerging voices are what's going to take us and continue us. That's my thing, because you can't have new if you don't tap into the emerging.
Yeah, agree. One thing you've had to unlearn to lock into the next level?
Having a ego and attitude, and I've had to like teach myself that like a lot of this stuff like is fake. And I say that in the sense that it's like I was very thinking that because what I do is people perceiving it visual, that I always have to be caring about metrics and vanity and likes and validation. I had to like really learn quick that the outside validation does not matter at all as much as the internal validation, and the internal validation helps you find your audience. I feel like right now I'm finally finding my audience. Like all these people, just because I come from sports, because I work with athletes, doesn't always necessarily mean that they're the ones that are going to be translating the most with what I do. So you have to just learn that like it's you and put it out there and don't worry about the validation.
Yeah. So what's the biggest creative risk you've taken?
Biggest creative risk I've taken. I definitely just think in general, like leaving corporate for creative was a big risk. But there were some projects where it was literally like, I'm going to go do this whether I know it works out or not. Like getting a one-way ticket to Paris because I wanted to shoot Fashion Week, and then the day before Fashion Week started, I don't have a job to shoot, and then I'm in Paris and get a call that I get a job to shoot, like things like that, to where it's like I would often put myself in situations to where I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work out, but it did because I was there. So sometimes you got to do that. And there's stories of that to where it's like, hey, I, just have my camera and this, and I'm going to show up and get what needs to get done. Those are moments,
Those are moments, and you've literally taken bold and brilliant steps to do that.
Bring it back to the tagline, girl.
Yes. And what's your dream project?
My dream project. I want to do, I wouldn't say it's like a project necessarily. I want to do more documentary storytelling and filmmaking on like telling more about the creative process, telling more about like the connection between sport and fashion. I think that just that more long form storytelling, like artful stuff is, what I want. I think that we don't have enough like good films that share that. So I think, just being in that like director seat feature film is like a dream for me.
Yes. And what does it mean for you to be bold and brilliant?
To be bold and brilliant is to be bold in the pursuit of everything that you want, and know that no matter in the rejection, no matter what the outside world is telling you, that like your brilliance is what's going to get you to the next step.
Ooh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining the show. You really exemplify what it is to live a bold and brilliant life.
Thank you.
So grateful you're here. Any final words you'd like to share?
No, just thank you. I mean, you're doing it too. Like, I have to just say that when I saw you at a Nets game, it was in January or February. Yeah. And I was like, your personality is just so amazing. I said, you should do a podcast. And I just literally said that to you. And I'm going to be honest, I don't say that to very many people because sometimes I think we need to put the mics down.
I hear you.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Sometimes we need to put the mics down. But I was like, I feel like you always uplift people. When I saw you at different events and things, you bring that perspective. You interviewed me at Layers, and I said, you would be great. And you said, hey, I had a dream that I'm going to start a podcast, and I had a dream that you were my first guest. And that was crazy. So to see you doing that is you living your creative pursuits too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's like, thanks for reminding me. Yes. I literally had a dream. I said, I'm going to start a podcast, and you're going to be the first guest. Like, and here we are, you as the first guest. It's been a long time coming, but I'm so grateful, and I would not want it any other way.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you, and you're going to do great with this podcast. And
thank you.
It was fun.
Yes.
I was scared.
Yes. Well, tune in on her social media. Where can we find you?
At Domio on Instagram. And I'm starting to step up my TikTok game. I know I need to get in there. And then follow the gallery, Layers, the exhibition. I would really appreciate it. I sell prints and things too, so just check it all out. And if you're a brand out there, hire me.
There you go. Put yourself out there. You're being bold and brilliant.
Let's go.
Love
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. This is the Bold and Brilliant Life Show.